Anthony Darby, the Peninsula podcast. I have the famous Nurse Laura. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
We just mentioned Nurse Laura is now our league leader for her third appearance. She is the, I'm trying to think, who are some of the SNL folks that do come back all the time? I think of John Goodman has been on. I think he probably has hosted more than most.
Jimmy Fallon is who I think
Jimmy
of.
Fallon, yeah.
I'm not quite Jimmy Fallon, but
Exactly.
I do a little dance.
So, and welcome back. It's nice to have you. It is chaotic and pandemic times that we bring you back. I'm trying to think. So, I know that the last podcast we did was in the quote-unquote Oval Office, I believe, right? Were both podcasts in that?
No.
The first one was done Chamber.
Yeah.
Yes. That's right.
I've seen lots of different spaces for Peninsula.
You really have got to see us glow up, as they say.
Really?
We started in very, very humble beginnings at Snow Hill, and I remember having my office taken from me within like 90 days of it now being storage for something or, something of use for the business. Mary Pat was kicked out within like 6 months.
Yeah.
We were squatting on top of the Chamber of Commerce building, which if you were to go downtown, they've actually knocked down every wall except for the front wall, and they're building potentially the tallest building in Salisbury. It's supposed to be 13 or something crazy levels high.
Wow. 13.
Called the Ross. Called the Ross, with a center green space, like the whole 9 yards.
Oh, nice.
So I met Nick. Nick, the guy who's actually trying to bring this thing to light. He's a younger guy like me. He's got a lot of ambition, so I'm excited to see it happen. But it was a little sad to see them knock down. That was actually
your starting space.
That was where my very first business that I started my office was as well, in the bottom floor in like 2010. So I had a lot of history and a lot of sentimental ties to 144 Main Street, the Chamber building, but now we're at Mount Herman in our full-time location for the next 10 years. No more squatting, no more moving around. Ideally, we have plenty of space to grow and continue to serve patients and do what we need to do on the administrative side. So we're really happy to be here, and I'm really excited to bring you here for the first time and show you our new space.
Really beautiful location, easy to find right off the road. There was signage, really nice. I was greeted when I walked in. I liked seeing the Salvation Army bell.
Yeah.
That was nice.
You're probably going to hear this maybe after Christmas when we actually get this thing out to the public. But, I was so excited. Our local Salvation Army was really inclined to help us out. And we have bell ringers from 10 to 12 on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday through the season. And I just talked to Ty Awesome, one of our patient consultants and wrestler. And he said that almost like 1 out of every 2 patients was like throwing something in the pot. So like we have a really incredibly generous patient base. They always show up for Toys for Tots. They always show up for the Red Kettle campaign. So it's really, really cool to be able to continue to be like, this beacon of the community, giving back and really changing how folks look at us traditionally as a cannabis dispensary.
Yes, you and the dispensary team. I mean, you, Mr. Entrepreneur of the Year, all these different awards you've been getting recently. I feel like I should be interviewing you.
No, teamwork makes the dream work. And I honestly had the thought last night, if any of those guys downstairs are listening, which they probably are not, a lot of the words that I got this year were kind of focused around like myself, but like they were really indicative of everything that the team has done and the transition that those guys have been able to make from not like basically being under-resourced at Snow Hill Road, then a pandemic coming, and then like serving patients in a park. It was just like chaotic. And then I bring them in here and say, look, we have to be the best in class. We have to be raise the bar of anything we've ever delivered before from a patient services standpoint, a customer service standpoint. And they've all bought in, and the campus is like, it's really organically growing. So like this morning, we had our first employee-only yoga class this morning, pre-work.
Wow.
So some employees got to de-stress before work and take a class. It's all about building this wellness, and like it's crazy down there right now. They're crazy busy, and to be able to offer on this campus in one spot, a spot for them to go and take that. Thank you, Jerry Miller, as always, kind of our token yoga instructor, although we have with Benny. Jerry has been an amazing asset to our team and really volunteered to help out as much as possible. So it's coming to life.
Yeah. Oh, and I appreciate that you did something for your team. That's so important. So often, it's like the plumber doesn't take care of his own plumbing. So often in teams, especially in wellness, nurses are a good example, where you can't take care of yourself or you don't make the time to take care of yourself, so that you're showing your employees that it's a priority to have their wellness as a consideration and to give them something as an opportunity right here at work.
Yeah, I'm trying to practice what I preach and have them do the same, because, when we had, when Corona really started getting that second uptick and the fear started coming, I kind of had to come in the Jesus moment with everyone and brought them into the room and was just like, this is going to suck. And I don't know when the suck is going to stop. So we have to take care of ourselves and keep ourselves as safe as possible so that we can take care of others, because we are essential. We have to do this. Yeah, wear a mask, wash your hands. We now COVID bomb the place every 2 weeks. I mean, we've really implemented. We've been on a deep cleaning trend since March, and also just trying to make sure that there's no Christmas party this year, because I have a gathering that could be potentially dangerous. And we really, although we offered the class this morning, there was only a few employees. They were all socially distanced. We have to be really mindful of everything that we do on the campus now because of COVID, which, as we get later into the podcast about how it's changed everything, I'll go through and share some of the things that we've had to change, and interested what you've had to do too. So we are here. This is podcast 3, and now we are in our new space. I wanted to talk a little bit first about what you've been up to. So start with District first. I can tell you that District Cannabis has been a very popular brand to Eastern Shore. Our patients have loved their flower, and although I'm not a flower guy, I have really loved the products from MPX, featuring the beginning flower from District. And so much so that people have really gone out of their way to tell me how high of quality it is. And it is a medical market, and I'm a stickler for that. But their branding is pretty sweet too. I mean, they do a good job. I have stickers on my water bottle.
Your water bottle when I walked up.
I have an astronaut on my car, actually. I think their branding is really neat and cool. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing with them. Now tell me what you guys how that may change if people were able to see you again face to face.
Well, it's an interesting story, because when we first started talking about working together, the idea was that I was really going to be out there in DC and Maryland doing pop-ups and education classes and events, and then COVID came along.
This Rona.
And shut all of that down. But I align so much with the philosophy of growing, even from my roots in starting back with Verano and growing. When I learned about District Cannabis and the way they were growing, the way they were processing, met Grace and Androsh, and I just saw all the work that they were doing. I knew that I wanted to align with them and I wanted to work with them. After starting in a grow, I really was missing that connection to the plant. And so it was really cool to have the opportunity to do something with them, but then COVID came along. And so at first, I just started doing some blog articles. If you go to the District Cannabis website, which is like districtcannabis.us, there's an Ask Nurse Laura page. There's a big, huge picture of my face.
Nice.
And then there are a couple of articles that I wrote. I wouldn't say that blog writing is my thing, but when push came to shove and it was a way to keep the relationship going, I took the time and I did some writing, which was okay.
Yeah. I'd much rather give that presentation. I'd much rather give the speech with the infographic behind me than have to actually put something down. And Unfortunately, from our marketing department, which is constantly trying to work on getting our website more clicks and these different things, me talking doesn't do too much. They really want to see the written version of it. So
I've heard that recently from them.
and my marketing department too, right? Yeah, but I think my marketing department's even asking me to write stuff. Yeah.
And I'm capable at writing. I'm good at English, and it's just that I like.
I read good. I write well.
I can spell.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I cannot, and my grammar's horrible actually.
So yes. So that was one way that we started out connecting, and I even had the funniest experience. I don't even know if it ever went anywhere, but they were asking me to do something related to like cooking and like a cooking lesson with cannabis, and I really hadn't done a lot of that previously. And so it was COVID, so we weren't coming into a studio. So I purchased some of their CBD RSO in DC as a medical patient. And I made CBD brownies for the first time ever, and I videotaped it and talked all the way through it.
How were they?
And then I sent it to them. I don't think it ever went anywhere. But it was a good experience. It was fun. I got to try it. I learned that
someday when you're rich and famous, they'll be like, your outtakes.
I have these little.
How'd they taste?
They tasted fine. I mean, you really couldn't taste with the RSO. You really couldn't taste it. Yeah. My concern, really, and now that I've done a little more research, I really do understand that probably I still baked off a lot of the terps because I lowered the temperature, but I don't think I lowered it enough. I think the most important part, and you can correct me if you know better, this is less medical,
sure.
But I think it's that you have to just keep the cooking temperature like longer and lower so that you're not, either converting the THC to CBN or just baking off all the terpenes, like those sorts of things. So I think I might have had my temperature up too high.
Let's go down a rabbit hole for 1 second. So,
why not?
If one thing that I've recently seen a lot of folks do with the Terps app is they'll put it almost at the end, so they're preserving all the terpenes and it's not getting heated at all and it's staying intact. So almost putting it in icing and then putting the icing on a brownie or something like that.
And I think that would be ideal, is to put it in the icing or in the topping.
The more research that I'm doing, and I'm not Dr. Hoffman or even a Nurse Laura, I'm just some poor man's Anthony Darby. Eating terpenes does not equate to the same thing as inhalation with terpenes, and I'm not sure that it matters a whole bunch. And like my personal experience with edibles, besides the awakening tabs from Curio, I would say would really be the exception. There's very few cannabis products that I find stimulating. The Wana Sativa gummies don't stimulate me, and then all the other cannabis products, they just make me relax. It's always very much a sedative feeling.
That makes sense to me because of the 11-hydroxy THC conversion in your belly. Like that does make sense. That's what we would expect.
So like the Incredibles brand really boast this model, the same thing that I'm saying, and basically saying that that's why it's okay to use high quality distillate with not a lot of terpenes in it that are burnt off, because it doesn't really matter when you're eating it. The THC is the active chemical component when you're eating it that you're really looking for, not limonene or pining.
Aren't they advertising though like a daytime and a nighttime gummy? Like what?
But that's got CBN in it.
That's because of the CBN. Okay.
Which
that's how they're adding that to make. Yeah, it is. CBN is great for sleep.
It's 10 milligrams of THC and 2 milligrams of CBN. And they gave us these. I'm actually wearing Incredible socks right now. They're super cool. And they gave us these boxes. And other places do this too. The label says. So it wasn't a label of a product. It was just like a one-pager flyer. And what I saw, and I just glanced at it, was 100 milligrams of THC and 20 milligrams of CBN. And I was thinking, gonna kill these people. Who needs this one? So I screenshot
Not like we haven't seen that on the market before.
I fired off a text at Mary Pat. And in her haste of seeing just me send this to her, fires the email off to the entire team like, no one give this to anyone without like significantly telling them to cut them in like tens and like. Cody responds back, hey, it's 10 milligrams per gummy. Too. I was like, oh, my bad. Thought we were gonna like put down like a mule. Jesus.
Do you remember way back when? I think I won't say the brand, even though I can think of the brand in my head. But a brand put out 100 milligram RSO capsules accidentally. I don't think it was on purpose, and it was a mess. And some people wanted them.
That's like my max. Like that's the most I took. I just took the strawberry peach one time and just said, what happens if you take all 10 at one time? Mm-hmm. And it was pretty relaxing, but it was definitely intense. Mm-hmm. I just slept. Like I said, I just don't like. That's not typically when I use cannabis. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm normally busy enough. There's not enough hours in a day for me to get enough sleep that I need. It's not hard to fall asleep.
You don't have a problem falling asleep.
If you give me a pillow, I'm done.
I'm not like that. I'm a night owl. I could use. In fact, that's something I really wanted to talk to you a little bit about as part of the Peninsula Wellness Campus. I see that you have these like sleep bundles, and you're working on things that have to do with some melatonin and magnesium supplements, which I know magnesium is good for relaxing and sleep. So and that's a lot of what I do when I'm consulting with patients. We're talking about Peninsula's hemp drive CBD and the Wana CBD gummies. We're talking about cannabis in the dispensary, and then we're talking about supplements and relaxation exercises and really the total wellness package. That's why we're so great together.
Yeah, and so if you don't know, Nurse Laura represents our holistic CBD brand on the other side of the bridge and works with physicians and practitioners over there, and then also individual folks that are looking to get CBD. But we all believe that it's a combination of some tools and then behavioral modifications and activities that you can do. But I've been really impressed you mentioned some of the things. So we have 3 signature packages. We have a Be Well, Feel Well, Sleep Well. Be Well is about mental health. It comes with a journal to encourage journaling and some of these different activities that we think could really help, along with 2 15-minute consultations with Donnie. So when, if you want to give the box to, let's say, Mom gets the box, the first thing she's going to do is be able to call in and talk to someone who's really educated about the products for 15 minutes to get an idea how to start, where to go. And then in 10 to 14 days, she can call back and give back her experience and really let us know how it's going. Provide with a dosing journal. If she's diligent enough to fill out the dosing journal, they can provide those results back to us. We can really do a much better job of cutting down these dosing changes and modifications and titrating up and down through a more hands-on consultative approach. Mm-hmm. The Sleep Well comes with a sleep mask. It comes with a candle that we actually work with Unwind Candle Company out in Carroll County. Shout out to Dave Neath and Unwind Candle Company for a great sleep-based candle. And then, of course, our tincture as well.
Mm-hmm. Great Christmas gift, too.
It is a great Christmas gift. The
gift.
next top-selling item that we have, honestly, outside of and this is true, our tincture and our balms are still our number one selling items. But sleep support from Curio, which, to your point, it has some melatonin, it has some passion flower, it has a couple other supplements. It's really reasonably priced. It is $20 for a 60-day supply, 60 capsules. Oh, wow. And most folks are taking a capsule an evening. And we're hearing that their THC need has been reduced. I'm hearing that they're sleeping longer, like more, the iterations of them waking up have been cut down, and it's been really, and there's a relaxation support, which is next to sleep support is the next thing that we do a lot of. So Curio has been a great partner with their supplement line that we're really proud to carry, and then Seeking Health gives us the other additional top supplements like the magnesium and some of the vitamin D. Zinc.
Yeah. I mean, right now, again, with COVID, it's a good time to be thinking about those sort of supplements. I think, I hope many people are probably adding more of those things normally during the winter, but especially with the COVID situation, it seems like having some of those supports make even more sense for most people.
I'm one thing that we're in a process of exploring downstairs. We've identified a vendor now who we feel really comfortable with. We've really gone through their lab tests and their methodology on how they test their products. But some of these Delta 8 products, and I'm curious your thoughts on that. Do you?
Yeah. My concern is that patients get confused. There's so many different things, and the more we have, if don't have the type of support that you have in your dispensary and the wellness center, patients don't know what to do. And they get confused, and then they don't know what to expect, and they don't know what to take. And so, I mean, I've read the science. I think that there definitely sounds like Delta 8 products could be beneficial, and, you know, maybe we have more availability, and I think there's some benefit.
Yeah, to me, it's like a minor cannabinoid, right? Seems to be some applicability for it in some different applications. I don't know how long it'll stay in its influx of legality with people testing positive on drug tests with Delta 8 and things like that. I think very quickly there'll be some higher level of regulation coming down the road, which doesn't affect us because
You have it covered on both sides.
Yeah, covered on
right.
both sides, right? Which is one of the big things that benefits that we have. But it is, it's interesting. It's getting like a lot. I think a lot of the hype is probably unnecessary, but I do think there's some applicability there, and we're going to explore it a little bit. It seems with pediatric patients and just different patients, you know, we're at the point now where we get a lot of the special cases. We get a lot of the more complex cases where it's not just like, I have arthritis in my right knee and I want to go to sleep. Which strain should I smoke before I go to bed? It's 15 prescriptions and every doctor there and silent diseases and, you know, all the fun stuff.
Yeah, well, and again, that's why I do what I do, and that's why you have Mary Pat. And thankfully, Mary Pat's a pharmacist, not a nurse. But Mary Pat has the background and the knowledge and takes the time and the effort as a healthcare professional. And that's really important. I really am grateful. I mean, obviously it's my business model, so it's important to me. But I'm grateful that the commission is requiring clinical directors moving forward for dispensaries. And I hope that most dispensaries choose a clinical director that's actually going to do some work and not just check a box. That's the biggest thing that I sell myself on. Yeah. Not only do I have the medical background, which I really think understanding the wellness piece, which many lay people can do, you are a great example of that. Also understanding the medical conditions, the background, also understanding the medications and interactions, particularly with herbal and natural supplements. There's a greater risk with some natural supplements than there are with cannabis interactions with traditional medications.
I had I had kidney surgery where it was something, and I posted a picture of my mango ginger chews, basically boasting that I don't need any pills. And someone's like, "Do you know there's turmeric in there, and you shouldn't have turmeric pre-surgery?" I was like, I'm gonna die of turmeric. Like all this weed, like I just took enough weed to put down, a horse, and I was gonna do turmeric that's gonna get me like.
Right.
But you're right. There are, and that's maybe a poor example, but are.
It's an example though, because in super high doses, it's a blood thinner, and so maybe you shouldn't take a blood thinner before surgery.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you probably take enough to cause a problem?
No, I don't think so.
Right. But
and that's the thing, like how CBD interacts with a lot of medications,
Coumadin.
right? Yeah, could CBD interact with medications? Yeah, it could, but typically we don't see it until incredibly high doses. So back to the clinical director thing, I do hope that we see a pattern of where things get cleaned up a little bit. Some of these dispensaries that have leaned a lot more towards the rec side at least will accommodate patients that need a medical expert and need some help. I think it is interesting and really important to have both sides of the puzzle. I think that if I were to say one of the things that makes me unique in my job is that I've had a lot of history in cannabis. I've had a lot of history in business. And my navigating of both of those things at the same time makes me kind of a unique person. Same with Dr. Hoffman, who understands cannabis more so than most people, but then also has this whole other knowledge base of pharmaceuticals and how traditional medicine kind of works with multiple providers, and
Right.
you have that same background, and that's why I think you're so valuable to patients, because so many of our patients are just siloed out. If they we did a patient survey to see how we were doing on the wellness side, and one of the comments was, I'm currently undergoing chemotherapy at the hospital, and I was dumbfounded, was the word she used, that they had no clue that I could be co-treating at your facility as well. They had no clue on how to help me or how to answer any of my questions. And I think that's the case with a lot of our patients. Even if you think about how they're getting their certification, they're not going to their primary care doctor, they're not going to their typical specialist, they're typically going to a cannabis doctor, cannabis certifier, who stands by themselves, who's probably not talking to their primary care doctor in all these cases. So you being able to walk these patients through and help them understand what it's like on the other side of the coin, outside of the dispensary. Like, hey, when you go back to your primary care physician, tell them this.
Yes.
When you go back to your cardiologist, or you go back to whoever you're going to see, your neurologist, these are some of the markers, and this is how you can speak to them and share with them in their lingo and in their language, so it doesn't sound like, hey man, I went to the dispensary and got some great weed.
Yeah.
We had a patient whose doctor did not believe that CBD could lower her blood sugar levels, or help not necessarily lower them, but allow
Impact
her
them
to
positively.
impact them positively.
To be
So she
politically
started
correct.
journaling like a mad woman, and stopped taking her medication, and only with the doctor.
Okay.
Just stop, Dr. Hoffman.
You saw the
make
pause
sure.
in my.
This is the part where I take a timeout and say, Dr. Hoffman does not endorse anything.
Yeah.
No, but she did. She slowed down her medication with the doctor's help, and they had a program. But she was only able to get the doctor's help once she posted a positive number and was able to show, hey, look, these are the readings, and this is the only thing that I'm doing differently.
So.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting thing. That's actually why I love what I'm doing the most right now, is because sometimes in talking to a patient, because I can take the time, especially COVID actually has been a little bit of a blessing on this, because we have a little more time. We're talking by phone or by Zoom, and people can include other people on the Zoom if they want to, that previously wouldn't have been able to come into the dispensary. Depending on where we are in the dispensary. And we are looking at the whole person and all of the doctors, and almost it's like case management. So when a psychiatric patient is out of control, for example, they need to go inpatient. Most often, the best way to get them figured out is to put them in the hospital, so you can monitor them 24/7 and figure out what medications they need that are going to get them kind of back on track and release them. So with cannabis and then all these other comorbidities and all these other medications, to have one person that you can talk to, and you can talk to them about all the different medications and all the different doctors and all the different things they're recommending non-medically too, and talk about your cannabis, and have someone who can understand and just kind of follow it, has been immeasurable, really. That doesn't, I can't report that out for your bottom line, because I too, like, I have the business background, the MBA and the nursing, but like, I believe we're saving lives. What's happening is I'll be talking to someone about something, and then I'll say, oh, well, didn't you say your mother this, and didn't you, why don't you consider asking your doctor this question? And then, 2 weeks later, they call me and they're like, oh my gosh, I had a test, I have this, I have an autoimmune disorder, I didn't even know. And so we're uncovering things because it's one whole person, which that's what they teach us in nursing school. Nursing is all about the whole person. It's not about a test result, it's not about a number, it's not about a fever, it's about a whole person. And so I really feel like I'm back to the roots of doing the most important work.
You think about the nurse's role. There's 15 doctors. You get the one nurse a day, right? Pretty much. Like today, your nurse's name, and she writes her name on the board, and who's helping me is this person. And then the 15 doctors come in and tell the one nurse.
It's kind of like mom, you know.
Yeah.
Like
But
mom
that's
will take care of
what's
it.
lacking so much. And I come from a personal background where I was caretaker for my father, and he was on 15 to 20 prescriptions. And then something would happen where he wouldn't monitor his Cumulin, his blood thinner. So now we're in the hospital, right? Because they got to get it right. So they take his intake. Mr. Darby, what pills or prescriptions are you on? Like my dad's going to rip off the 20 prescriptions by name, by milligram, and dosing time that he's being fed every day. No way. So then it gets modified, right? And then the doctors come in, because while you're there, they might as well get you looked at by everybody. And everybody, the cardiologist stops by and says, "Hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm gonna get while you're here. I'm gonna get this test done. Next thing you know, okay, we're gonna discharge you now, and here's 7 different prescription changes, and but you only saw half your specialist. And it was like, and then we go to the primary care doctor, and he'd be like, okay, here's a prescription list. Well, why are you taking you shouldn't be taking all these? We're like, how's he going to know, man? He's not a pharmacist.
I mean, it really is confusing, and really with
and that's
all
not an uncommon story. That's the narrative. What a lot of sick people face, especially, and this is something I keep coming back to, and it's bad to say this, but because of the way that prescriptions are paid for, meaning that there's not typically a lot of out-of-pocket charges for the most part for a lot of prescriptions. Your own 20 prescriptions that cost you $20 a month. You don't ask a ton of questions.
Yeah.
With us, an eighth of cannabis is $45, $50. They want to know everything about it. They want to know, it's your financial commitment to that product is much greater, and such that you're more tied to it. When these prescriptions are given at $1 a clip, there's no real tie to it, and it doesn't necessarily drive discipline of using the prescription as it's intended.
Especially if it has side effects that you don't like.
I just think that somehow people, even though they're so cheap, they're tired of it, and they're moving away from them. They're saying there's a reason why someone's paying for this and giving it to me, as opposed to like.
Yeah. And again, you guys, Peninsula Wellness, offering the service of being able to follow up and talk to someone about that package of your health is so important, because there are patients that go to dispensaries. They go one time, they get a bunch of stuff. It's their last ditch effort. They tried everything. They come here, they get their card, maybe not here, they go somewhere. And then they buy a whole bunch of stuff. They try it once or twice, have a negative reaction or no reaction, and then they give up and never come back. And what we've just done is taken away their hope, because cannabis, that card, was the last green hope, and now it's gone.
Yeah.
But with a medical, a healthcare, someone with some knowledge and background to follow up with them. That follow-up is so important. Like, I have had people wanting to do contract work with me, because so the way my business works is I work with multiple dispensaries, grow facility. I actually only work with the one grow, District Cannabis. At doctors, I work with a group, Mary Jane Consults, that does the cannabis certifications. However, they actually have trained under Dustin Sulak. They do a full-on hour-long they do a real evaluation, and they refer their patients to me. For a little while, they were even covering a part of my time to follow up with the patient, because I still am closer to what's offered in the dispensary than they are.
Sure.
That's the hard part. See, there's so many pieces of bridging that gap, and the one other piece that we didn't really address yet is knowing what's available. So there are lots of people that have the background in medicine, have the background in cannabis, but if you're in Pennsylvania, you can't tell me what's available at the dispensary.
That was
in Maryland.
It's less challenging now because we have so many SKUs, but still a challenge. But in the beginning, the doctors would take their online continuing education course there one time, and they would come back and they would start throwing these things out. Like, the patient would come in, I need a 32-to-1 ratio. Right, I'm like, all right, weigh out 32 grams of this.
Yeah.
Go find some CBD from the pharmacy and mix them together. Like, what do you mean? Like, I have 3 strains of flour to sell right now. You want a 32-to-1 ratio? Like, And they would come in like this, like you tell the same doctor was just running off the same like thing every time. So you're right. It's not just understanding the traditional medical needs of what these patients have and the environment they're coming from. It's not just understanding cannabis, but it's also understanding the exact environment in which the patient faces in terms of, is there flower? Is there not flower? Are there access to products? Even patients in Maryland have different access issues depending on where you live.
Yeah. And so that's been an interesting thing again since COVID. I have had the opportunity with the patients, like we'll be on Zoom and I'll have them share their screen and we'll pull up a dispensary menu. And most of the time, especially if the dispensary is paying me, not the patient, because sometimes patients pay me directly for my time. Sometimes I have a contract with the dispensary. But if the dispensary is paying me, I will try to get to the patient to a point and then refer them back to the dispensary staff. So they're not paying for my time to just be shopping. But they need to get to a place where they have enough information. And for a short time when COVID first started and everyone was swamped, it even made sense for me to help the patients do some of that kind of stuff just because it helped to get the orders in.
So happy to be seeing patients face to face again. I mean, we went almost 90 days without allowing anyone in the building at Snow Hill. And that's what we pride ourselves on, is this hand-to-hand combat of these patients that are in the trenches trying to get better, and we can take the time and talk to them. And it was just so tough to do in a curbside setting. So it's great to be back doing that. And it's sad that it's not, I shouldn't say sad, but it wasn't the intention of the MMCC to ever not have clinical directors lead these dispensaries. They got out-lawyered by industry. But the knowledge and the approach that you bring and that we bring, it really isn't necessarily the norm and or what the majority of patients have access to. So I hope that with the new clinical director position that, eventually some of the folks that get these titles will hold themselves to a level of standard and say, okay, well, if you're going to be on my roster representing me, you're going to have to change X, Y, and Z to be more in line. I mean, I hope that's what we see.
Yeah, I hope so too. That's been a little bit of a challenge for me, is I have had some opportunities to work with people who had a different mission for what they wanted to do with the clinical director, and still meeting the requirements and still a good person, good dispensary, nothing wrong, just we had a different philosophy on how the clinical director role would be fulfilled. And I, at first, was just like, okay, no, thank you. There are other people, you have people that cost probably a third of my fee that could fill that role for you, meet the bare minimum requirement, check a box. That's not what I want to do. But what has happened over time is, as I've talked to more of the dispensaries, once I really get on the call with the decision maker and I explain to them what the difference is, and that really, again, I would love to have like actual reports and numbers to prove it to the business person. But I think generally when you bring on a patient, you engage that patient, they know they have that support. Not only are they, even though they have the choice to go anywhere, going to consistently shop with you, I think they in the end buy more products, because it's so easy without even thinking. I usually have patients getting at least a topical, and if they're only using THC, adding some CBD and adding something for breakthrough and adding the bad day stuff. And like we just start layering up that toolbox, because I'm like, yes, we may be able to help you decrease or get off of 5 to 10 prescription medications, but we're going to take this one plant and give you 5 or 6 options of ways to use that one plant in a variety of products. So it still can impact your bottom line better and give you a reliable customer base.
For me, it's about the understanding like the patient journey, and I honestly believe that a patient that comes into the market either from a traditional street user or a new patient and doesn't heed our advice and just goes after high THC products, they all seem to meet this end burnout stage where the products that they're having to use become more and more expensive, the effects become less and less dialed into what they were hoping to achieve, and this medicine no longer becomes really a viable thing for them to do. versus patients that come in and they take a approach of, first thing I'm going to do is see what happens when I add CBD into my life. And then I'm going to understand where I need to baseline my CBD usage, because typically CBD usage needs to be a daily driver. This is not something that you're just going to use on a Friday night, or it doesn't work like that, right? So get a baseline, understand, go ahead and fill out your application, get the ball rolling to get your card going, but start that CBD use for 30 days before you use any THC. Then titrate in, add in THC as needed, whether it's through a topical balm, whether it's through a vape pen, whether it's through flower, whether it's through whatever method of administration you want to go through. But don't just go in there, see the board, say 31's higher than 24, that one, and then start yourself off where you're just immediately blowing your tolerance and immediately just blowing your endocannabinoid system. The whole thing is homeostasis, the whole thing is balance. If all you're doing is just flooding it with one single chemical compound at the endocannabinoid system, you're not going to get what you're trying to achieve. So I'm trying I'm trying to build patients to be with me for the long haul.
Yes.
And I think the way to do that, to your point, is to really focus on the ECS, really focus on the endocannabinoid system, and try to understand, how do I balance this for someone who's not sleeping? What balance does that look like? Well, maybe it means CBN, maybe it means a little THC, it means focusing on terpenes like linalool and myrcene and things like that. Just understanding a really more detailed approach to balancing the endocannabinoid system to get the health outcome that we're trying to achieve. And it doesn't always come from just ripping 10 bong hits of the highest THC.
Well, and tolerance breaks. Like when you actually get the opportunity to talk to a patient and explain to them how they're going to benefit themselves and their endocannabinoid system if they take tolerance breaks routinely, rather than just once in a while when they just, get sick or something. Like, you really can keep your tolerance lower, which therefore means you spend less money and you get better relief. I have had some amazing conversations that have taken a break, which they maybe never had in the past, and then come back and they're like, oh my gosh, I got a high again,
Yeah,
and
it doesn't take long. And that's it really doesn't. Depending on, some folks need to take weeks. Some folks can live, like myself, honestly, I can go 24 hours and it's almost like a night and day reset switch for me. And I also have noticed the difference when I space out. So I always try to have at least a 12-hour gap in the nighttime before the morning time before I use cannabis, and I found that typically gives me, when I use it the first time in the morning, I'm getting that same desired effect almost every time. I've been on the same regimen now for over a year. But it all starts with CBD in the morning. My THC product that I use that day depends upon the day. So am I stuck in an office all day where I have spreadsheets to look at and things like that, then maybe I'll go pining and maybe I'll have something that will have me more engaged. Am I doing a podcast today? I'm probably going to go limonene, probably something a little bit more flexible so I'm not so stressed out, more relaxed. But it's
hopefully you don't feel stressed out talking to me.
I do not at all. But it's 40 milligrams of CBD every morning. And I was at 60 and I cut back a little bit just because it's expensive for everybody, right? So I was curious to see what would happen if I went from 30 to 60, which was a really high jump. But at 30 at the time, whether it was or wasn't, I didn't really feel like I was getting the desired results. And then I jumped to 60, and I also took a tolerance break, and I played with the THC, and then I was able to really identify, because just like with prescriptions, man, if you're throwing 10 things at your body every day, and 10 things could be sugar, it could be caffeine, it could be, you really break down what you're putting into your body, you're not necessarily getting a good gauge on how things are. So cut sugar out completely, but I really tried to reduce the amount of sugar that I put into my body overall.
Were you like a soda drinker?
Not for probably 3 or 4 years, but stress eating sweets, to be completely honest with you.
I saw there was a cool donut shop on the way here, but I didn't stop.
Oh, on the right-hand side there is. And there's a local place called Sugar Rush by Teresa that's only open on Friday and Saturdays, but her lineup is just out of control of cookies and cakes and brownies, and that's my MO. And we have Island Creamery. There's no shortage of places to go fulfill your stress if you want to eat. But that's not good. And my weight would fluctuate, 15, 20 pounds, or previously over years, depending upon
Right.
stressed
And
out.
3 to 5 pounds is considered somewhat normal, but 15 to 20 is not healthy for your
Yeah,
body.
I would literally balance between 200 to 220, depending. Like you could look at my face and see how things were going. I started intermittent fasting around February. That's been my weight has been overly consistent, even through COVID, even through everything, with utilizing that. And I'm looking at the clock now because I'm hungry. I typically start around noon.
It's time I'm allowed to
cut off
eat.
around 8. And I find to be less bloated. I feel like I have more energy. It works for me. I know it's not for everyone. I'm not ever saying it's the end all be all, but for me, especially with my schedule being busy in the morning, it's easy for me to get from 8 to 12 and not worry about food when I'm talking to you.
You know, it's so interesting. And I know this is a little bit of, I guess, a sidebar with talking about nutrition, but it's wellness, right? So we're all, I have always been a fan of breakfast, right? That's for the longest time it's been, you have to start your day with breakfast. Breakfast is brain food. Don't skip breakfast. And so when intermittent fasting first came around, I read lots of articles on wellness. Like that's something I've been passionate about my whole life. And I was like, oh, it's just another one of those fad diets. And so I would read the stuff and not really pay a lot of attention. But really in the past, since COVID, I've been paying more attention because people that I know and respect have really done amazing things with their health, not just their weight. Because to your point, it's really important. Like there are many things that you could do that you'll lose weight on, but are you suffering in other ways?
Yeah, do you get more energy? Do you feel better?
Right. Are you actually healthier? Yeah. And there really is a lot of research that I've been reading recently that it really is supportive of intermittent fasting. And I really think that part of the reason for it, and this is just the me piece, not from a research article, is that historically, right? Yeah, right? Historically,
cavemen didn't get to eat
they didn't have the
14 hours a
opportunity.
day.
Right, just like they didn't have
No,
Google
man, you sat
and
down,
Apple Watch.
you ate what you shot that day, and you went out and find something else to shoot. Like,
Right.
that's the primal instinct to me. I just feel like my stomach is better at digesting food for a limited period of time a day than to just keep it running. If it was if it's a car, you wouldn't keep it running all day long.
But if you had diabetes or another disease process, you would need to eat something because and so you would know that. So again, it's just important. Like we said about Mary Pat, and she's not, enforcing anything. It's the same way with this. I'm not saying that everybody should use intermittent fasting.
Right.
I don't think it works for everyone. But I can see, at least now I can sort of value and appreciate why for some people, and even if it's for a short term, it could work. And also that some of the programs with it that I've looked at, there are different ranges, right? So you change the amount of hours and you can be flexible. So if it's a holiday or if it's a weekend.
My mom comes down twice a month.
Right.
And we go to breakfast on Sunday morning. I'm eating at breakfast. Like, I'm not going to not, you know what I mean? So, and that's what I like about it. It doesn't have to be like, but then, back to Monday, it's back to noon again. So it's just like, I don't know, it's worked for me. So let's end on a couple of things. So for me, I'll just give off a couple of mine. So February, March, when things got crazy, I changed my diet to make sure that I didn't because I was just trying to brace myself for the shitstorm that was about to happen.
Yeah.
It's like, let's open a new business, during the pandemic. Yay.
Sounds fun.
I changed my diet a little bit with intermittent fasting. I really tried to buy into the breathing, and I'll say yoga / put them all together, movement. So I had a trainer for a while, but we increased what we were doing, and then I got a lot more diligent and actually found for the first time I actually enjoy going to the gym on my own now. It seems that the outside world got so crazy that, believe it or not, actually lifting weights was more enjoyable than dealing with the outside world and people. It's like, yeah, that's heavy, but you know what? No one's asking anything of me. I can do this. And that movement has been really helpful to me in both just feeling better and keeping my energy levels high. I think those are probably the two biggest things that I've done. And of course, just everything else. I started taking zinc a couple weeks ago, just when I saw some articles supporting it for your immune system at around this time. What are you doing?
Yeah, it's a good question. So it's so interesting. When this all started coming out in like January, I was like, just kind of waiting to see. But then in March, when we had the 4 weeks of closure, I was panicked on the inside a little, because I am such a people person, and my whole everything I was doing tours at dispensaries for healthcare providers, and bringing nurses to grow facilities, and doing education classes on site, and all of this was now, I just kept getting cancel after cancel after cancel. So that was business-wise, but then personally too, I am a people person. I'm that person that has the craziest, busiest Monday through Friday week, and what I want to do on Friday night is go be with more people. Let me go. Even if I'm not drinking, like I just want to go be out in a crowd with a bunch of people, and then I feel better. I get energy from that. And so to be told that I had to stay home, and things at home were a little shaky, so it wasn't like, and I don't have siblings, and my kids aren't there all the time, so that was scary. And I had a moment of like, oh my gosh, like how am I gonna deal with this? I'm gonna lose my mind. But it's so interesting, because somehow this pandemic has helped me to find peace with, okay, I can hang out with Nurse Laura. Like Laura can hang out with Laura, and it can feel good.
Yeah.
And as things started to lighten up a little, I almost felt myself wanting to protect that space that I had created for myself, that was my own little time, and not even like some big pampering self-care type of thing, not anything dramatic,
just quiet, right?
Just being okay to have dinner alone at home and want to like cook a meal for me, not to serve to a bunch of people, or not to need to go out. Like I drink so little, but I do enjoy a good craft IPA, a double IPA, like a New England IPA. I'm really particular with what I'm going to drink, when I'm going to drink it.
Like a double cannon or no?
Like a double New England IPA is like, I like a strong IPA. I'll drink like half of it, but I really enjoy it. But in the past, I only started drinking after age. Like I was already old when I learned to drink. And, but I really, really enjoy it. And what happened was, once I couldn't go somewhere or be with other people, I was like, oh, well, I'm not going to drink alone. Well, so I found this kind of like, it's okay. I can have a little beer alone and put some music on and have my own little dance party, because I love to dance. And I just embraced this whole new piece of myself that I'm so grateful to the pandemic for, because if I have the opportunity to be with people in the past, I would have always chosen that first, even if it's just my kids or something. But now I'm like, no, I'm going to go over here and do my thing, whatever
That's
it
awesome.
is. And so that's been a really good thing. Nutrition wise, I don't know that it was directly related to the pandemic, but one of the things that I've added is collagen powder to my coffee. I don't know, I'm getting older, and it's supposed to help with skin and wrinkles and stuff.
I've heard of that before, because
and it's protein.
Some people do that while like intermittent fasting. They'll use that as like a little holdover to get through.
Because it has some vitamins.
Does it taste like creamer at all, or
it tastes like nothing. Like I don't even notice if you put it in black coffee. You can't even see. I do put cream in my coffee, so it blends right in. And what I found is, because it has some protein in it, I used to be big on breakfast, but now that coffee kind of fills me up. So I generally end up fasting in the morning, but I also moved my lunchtime up a little bit.
Yeah.
And like today on the way here, I had like a half of a fig bar or something, because I was like, ooh, it's going to be probably a little bit on the later side. I don't want to feel, I'm sensitive to food, so I don't want to feel like lightheaded or something.
Right.
You need to feel well, and then drinking water. I think being home.
I try to do that a lot too.
Being home, it's harder to pay attention to drinking water, whereas when I was always on the go, I would be grabbing water constantly, and so I really try to remind myself and other people. Oh, you're feeling? Have you had some water? Like, oh, have you had some water?
Are you
have a glass of water?
So anyone mentions a headache around you, you're like, hey,
have some water? Yep. Do you need some water? Your blood pressure needs some water. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of water.
I love it.
Just water out of the tap.
Big tip of the day. Get some
Drink
of that.
your
Get
water,
some of that tap water.
Wear
a mask.
Wash your hands.
You CBD again.
And CBD a day. Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Where can folks find you when they want to find Nurse Laura?
The website is rnforwellness.com. The 4 is the number 4. Nurse Laura
wellness.com.
Yeah, Nurse Laura at rnforwellness.com. I'm on Instagram at Nurse Laura BN, I think. But if you type RN for Wellness in Google, I think I come up still, which is good.
Thank you so much for coming
on.
on.
And District Cannabis, you can always do the Ask Nurse Laura.
Yeah, if you haven't been to District Cannabis website, go check them out. It's districtcannabis.us. See big Nurse Laura's smiling face.
Yes, and
welcoming
you can ask
you.
questions.
Ideally, you'll be able to find a blog from Nurse Laura sometime at PeninsulaWellness.com.
By the end of January,
as
maybe.
well, by end of January. You heard it here. Thank you so much for coming on. It's always a good time.
Thank you. Lots of fun.
Take care.
Thank you.